Hey everyone, quick little announcement here from Fishing the DMV. Our Weekend Warrior Club membership on Patreon is nearly full. There are only 8 membership spots still available. Once these spots are gone, they're gone, and I'll be closing down the club membership to new members until 2026. At that point, you can try to sign up, but it'll be at a higher rate. All Patreon members will receive 5% off their orders to Jake's Bait and Tackle, 10% off their orders to Tiger Crankbaits, 10% off their orders to Catoctin Creek Rods. You'll also gain access to our private Facebook group community. You'll also be allowed to enter our 5 club membership tournaments only with guarantee payouts. Members only content, ad-free, commercial-free episodes of the podcast, Patreon supporter giveaways, and so much more. And you get all of this for $6 a month, which is less than a pack of Cincos or a jackhammer chatterbait. And since we're under our 10 membership spot, I'm going to do something else. I'm going to give everyone a 10% off their membership if they sign up for the year. So that brings it down to under $65 a year, locked in indefinitely as long as you want to be a member. Hurry up because there's only so many spots left before I shut down the club to any new members until 2026.
You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome back to Monday Night Live. We are here on April 14th, the weekend before Easter. Easter is really late this year. Absolutely insane. We got a really fun show today. Part of it was on the cuff. I had a really good, almost philosophical conversation with the individual I'm about to bring on last night that we're going to get into. We're going to talk about what happened on the Pasquotank, a river that's pretty hard to spell, but it was impressive. I thought it was impressive. I even put a poll out about what people's vibe was down in North Carolina about how it went down. And most people were thoroughly impressed with it because the conditions weren't necessarily like perfect for it. I mean, he came close to 120 pounds. My God. And so I think we're going to start the show off with that today. But first, I want to say one of the guys, I don't even know, we call him like the head of Bass and Beer Radio, the crust, the backbone. But we have him right here. Paul, thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Thomas, how are you?
I'm doing great. And again, I really appreciate you coming on in such short notice today.
I just have to make a correction. I am definitely not the head of Bass and Beer Radio, but we can give that honor to Chad.
I was going to say, I'll make sure I give the honor to the right person. Chad, huge shout out. I'm going to get the whole crew on eventually here in the next couple of weeks, I promise. But a great show tonight. And I thought we just started off. Pasquotank, what are your initial thoughts coming away from that event?
Man, those guys went through hell. Conditions were not great, to say the least. And most of the guys were making long runs in really rough water, to get their butt kicked by somebody fishing a mile and a half from the ring.
Which was going into this event for me. And guys, we'll break this down a little bit as we go on. It was this: do you make a long run to find success, or do you stay close? And to me, when you look at the events where a long run has been a big factor, the Sabine. Well, the Sabine, the fishing is a little lackluster in the Sabine proper. And so leaving makes a lot of sense. Going into the Great Lakes makes a lot of sense. The Pasquotank Basin is no slouch. I mean, it doesn't suck fishing wise. I was kind of shocked in the back end that like a lot less people fished the Pasquotank River proper. That was a little bit shocking to me, I guess, that so many people made a big run versus stayed close.
Yeah, I don't necessarily know the area that well. I know a little bit about it, just from a friend of mine, about some of the good rivers, and some of the people were in areas that hold really big fish, and the weather just didn't cooperate. I know. Well, I mean, 3 guys in the top 10 were in the North River, which my friend who fishes down there frequently said that his thought was it was going to be 1 out of the North River if they could get there safely, with the weather conditions. But Kyle Welcher just kind of lucked out. From what I hear, he didn't really have anything to go on. And he said in practice, he actually told Swindle in practice that he had a 4-pounder in bed not far from the ramp, and he was going to go fish that and then figure out what to do. And he went to that 4-pounder first thing, and it was a 7, not 4. And then he caught another big one, and he just kind of clicked, and he's like, wow, this is going to kick off. And it did. I mean, he had fish coming to him all week.
He did. And then, guys, just to kind of like get right into it, Kyle Welcher, if you live under a rock, had 118 pounds for 4 days. The first 3 days were a perfect game almost, so to speak, where it's a 30 pound. He can't do it again. A 34-pound bag. It was impressive. And to me, maybe it's because he was doing so great. And the reason I put up the poll on Saturday is like, there was such a gap between him and second, third, and fourth place. So it's like, okay, how is it people can get onto these tears where they're fishing a different body of water? Because that's what it felt like with the weight that was going down in Kyle's spot compared to everybody else's. But again, you guys in the comment section kind of let me know, like, part of it is just the weather conditions did not play right. This is their first time being there. And I mean, a 10-pounder was caught, multiple 7s. Like, I mean, this place is freaking legit, and I hope more events are held there in the future.
Multiple 8s. There were multiple 8-pounders caught.
Really?
Yeah. I know. I think Hackney had an 8-pounder. Keith Combs had an 8-pounder. There were multiple 8-pounders caught. Multiple 8-pounders, a 10-pounder.
We got
Rodney
guy on YouTube trying to tell me it was going to take. I didn't think it was going to be that. I thought it was going to be good. I didn't think it was going to be that good. Insanely. Damn, dude. I mean,
Rodney fishes down there a lot. He lives in Norfolk.
Oh, well, there you go.
He knows it, and it's funny. He made an Instagram post before the tournament, and he called out exactly how it was going to be won. It was pretty impressive. Like the technique and like the where they would be fishing, where it would be called. Like he nailed it like to a T. It was pretty hilarious.
Did Paul? I
don't think he said the Pasquotank, but
Paul, did you or Rodney, if you're there, did anybody that you're aware of dabble with going to Back Bay? Because that was something in pre-shows.
John Cruz called a 7-pounder there the first day.
In Back Bay? Okay.
Yeah. He was in Back Bay when he called it 7-pounder. It was actually almost 8. I think it was 7:14.
Do you think they should have caught at a different time of year? Or you think this was the right time of year, just bad weather?
I think it was the right time of year, just bad weather.
Bad weather.
But, that's... in this part of the country, and I'll consider them part of, this part of the country, how volatile the weather can be in the springtime.
It really can be. Yeah.
Oh, I mean, the wind's been blowing it feels like the wind's been blowing for, 3 weeks. I was out yesterday on the bay, and I mean, it was blowing 25 all day.
It's crazy because you mentioned to me yesterday, like you had a decent day out on the Upper Bay, 7-pounder dropped. We're having multiple big bags caught in the Chick, the James proper. There was in the York River of all places, there was a 6.5, 7-pounder caught allegedly. What the hell is it with all of our tidal fisheries from the Pasquotank, Albemarle Sound, all the way up to the Upper Bay? It feels like every tidal river right now is popping off. It's insane.
I mean, I feel like it's mostly just the time of year, and more fish because of the cold winter, you had a bigger push, like a bigger pre-spawn push, instead of them just like trickling like they have been the last couple of years because it's been relatively warm. I mean, when we had, last year we had 50-degree water in February. Yeah. So, you get, instead of you having that steady trickle, we've just gotten, just big waves of fish. I mean, I blasted them yesterday. It was incredible. And that's only the second time I've been out on the bay. So it's not like I was dialed in or anything. I went out, figured it out pretty quick and just ripped on them.
To me, it's just also interesting, and maybe it's social media that you see so many big fish popped off. And I keep saying this, and guys, I know I probably sound like a broken record. It feels like we're in the best time to be alive to be a bass angler in North Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland, because there are so many fisheries that are just either on the upcline or are in the best days of their life right now. It's crazy how many fisheries you can legitimately catch a 7-pounder in, and it's tidal. I remember Al Linder back in the day is like, yeah, they fight good, but tidal fish don't get big, and it's like bullshit. Like all of our tidal fisheries, one that just rivaled Clear Lake almost broke the all-time 4-day record. It's crazy.
It's, that 4-day record. It's kind of funny, like, just how far away he was from it.
Yeah.
He would have had to catch over 40 pounds on the second or on the fourth day. So he would have had to drop 40 pounds on the fourth day to tie the record, which is insane for how much that, how big that record is. I mean, he caught over 30 a day for the first 3 days and still needed over 40-pound day on the last day to tie the record.
Let me see
Not to break the record.
Let me see if I saved. I know.
But guys, as far as you're saying,
as
far as you were saying about the tidal fisheries, I mean, it looks. I mean, the bay is on a huge upswing.
Yeah.
And we have good grass, and it's been fishing really good this year. It was fishing really good last year. I would say the size, the bags seem to be a little bit down from what I've noticed for the first few tournaments of the year. But you see, we are seeing a lot of big fish, and I think that's going to change when they get a little more concentrated, when they go a little bit closer to the spawn. You don't have to run to a billion different areas and catch a 5 here or 5 there. When those big fish get concentrated and ready to spawn, you're going to start seeing those 24 pound plus bags coming out of the bay like we do every spring.
It's crazy to think that a tidal fishery is now in the 100-pound venues. I took a screenshot, I put it on Facebook. I wish I saved the picture, but I didn't. But I wrote it down here. 100-pound venues that they put is Toledo Bend, Amistad, Okeechobee, Kissimmee, Clear Lake, Falcons, St. Lawrence, Fork, Sandy Cooper, Gunnersville, and now the Pasquotank. And it's interesting that of those alleged 100-pound fisheries, a lot of them aren't around anymore in the same way, like the Kissimmee chain. Yeah, maybe you get lucky, but I think that's not in the heyday it used to be. Okeechobee the same way. You probably
anywhere in Florida, though.
Yeah, anywhere in Florida.
I mean, you have the possibility of that.
Possibility, but do you think it's in its prime? And that's, it's just cool to think that a tidal fishery could be in the same. I mean, granted, a smallmouth. I mean, hell. The fact that we could talk about smallmouth as a century belt is bonkers. And that's the St. Lawrence. It doesn't even count like Green Bay, Michigan, any of those places.
Right. I was going to say that's more than one place. I mean, that's Green, like you said, Green Bay. I was trying to think of what that other bay that's up there that they have that big tournament every year.
Oh God!
Why can't I think of it? It's
Saginaw. No, I know it's
Sturgeon Bay.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean Sturgeon Bay. They have a big springtime tournament up there, and it takes like 30 pounds a day to win it. It's stupid. I think it's a 2-day tournament. It takes like close to 60 pounds to win. Yes, thanks, Rodney. It takes close to 60 pounds to win, or if not over 60 pounds to win that every year, or the last couple of years anyway. I mean, you have St. Clair. St. Clair could kick out 25-pound bags of smallmouth. It's crazy how good like fishing in general has gotten. And is it? Here's a philosophical question for you. Like, is it that the fishing is getting better, or is it just that we're becoming better at locating bigger fish?
Damn it.
Were these fish always there? I mean, I can tell you. I mean, I know of two 10-pounders that have been weighed in tournaments on the Upper Bay, but that was 10 to 15 years ago.
That's a damn good question. Actually,
big fish were there. I think maybe we just got better at catching them. I'm not even bringing live scope into this because on the bay, the live scope's not really a huge. It's not a huge player. I mean, we're not out chasing roaming fish. stuff like that. They don't need police when you're dock fishing, stuff like that. But
I mean, the sense of tidal water, to be fair, as we saw from this event on Albemarle Sound, scope can play with tidal fishing for sure. I know probably not up in your branch of tidal water, but
yeah, it's just not a big player.
Yeah,
that's it's not like everybody's out there scoping and catching 25 pounds. The majority of our fish are coming out of grass, so. Perspective maybe helps out a lot, but
perspective mode definitely does. I personally believe it's multitude of factors. I think we give our DWR departments a lot of shit, rightfully so in some regards, but at least in Virginia, with what they did with the James, and they stocked the York River and the Rappahannock, and they're trying the Back Bay they stocked a long time ago. I think the water quality is better. I do think there's better fish there, but then I can't disagree with what you're saying that the angler quality has gotten a lot better. Like everyone is smarter. Everyone get online and figure stuff out. But then you also have this really good SAV. Like you said, the Upper Bay has got good SAV in it. Potomac River. I don't know, man. And maybe you're right. Social media.
The SAV on the Bay isn't even as good as it was like 5 years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Maybe 7 years ago, 2017. So I guess almost 8 years ago now. We had a huge round of storms, and it just dumped mud out of the Susquehanna, and it destroyed a lot of the milfoil that we had. So we have less milfoil now and more hydrilla up here, and it's always better when there's more milfoil.
And then we have somebody here on Instagram says Billy C says they're also going to different places. They're showing off newer fisheries. That's true too. Because like these places that didn't get the same pressure now have tournaments as well. But the counter argument again is the Bay, the Potomac, the James haven't had a heck of a lot of tournaments the last 20 years. And the bags seem like they're doing very, very good stabilizing. I don't know. It'll be interesting.
Keep going up.
Yeah.
I mean, the Potomac seems to be on a little bit of I feel like the Potomac's on a little bit of a downswing.
It is. It's on a downswing.
And again, you can bring up SAV with that too. I mean, it's been on a downswing since, for some reason, whatever that reason might be, we lost a lot of the grass up north. I mean, there used to be tons and tons of grass up near like the Woodrow Wilson Bridge, and there's nothing there now. I mean, it's barren, and I mean, there's still fish there. It didn't change. It didn't seem like it changed the fish population as much, but I think they just moved.
They did, because really, and then someone in the comment section will say I'm wrong, but Pohick down is where you're going to be more consistent with finding your vegetation. You can find some above Pohick. I'm not saying you can't, but it's weird. Like you said, from Woodrow Wilson Bridge, like Greenway Flats and all that used to be just a carpet. And now it's kind of gone all the way down to like Pohick is that break wall, which isn't runoff from different developments, whatever it is. But I think we all agree the SAV is so important to the Upper Bay, the Potomac, the James, places like that to have the success that it does.
Greenway's been, I would say, north of Greenway. Greenway the last couple of years has had pretty good grass. So anything, but like you said, north of, I mean, that's at the mouth of Pohick. So, it's anything north of Pohick.
Which is,
it's hard to find.
We kind of poo-poo that, but that's a hell of an area from Pohick up to say like, yeah, none of that has grass anymore. That's a big area.
I'm not saying none of it has grass, but the main river grass is very lacking. There's still grass in the creeks. You can find plenty of grass in the creeks, but all that main river grass, like you have like Greenway, and farther down, when you get down like toward Playa, is just non-existent up there.
To put a cap on this event, were you shocked, enthralled with it? Like, what was your vibe with how the performance went down with Kyle and just in general? It
was one of the funnest tournaments that I've watched in a while. And outside of the, him blowing it out of the water, pretty much everybody in the top 10 was doing something different.
Yeah.
So, you got to watch people doing different stuff. You got guys that were scoping, you had guys that were just, straight flipping, throwing a swim jig, chatterbait, you name it. I mean, we had, was it Drew Benton? I think
so.
I think it was Drew Benton.
Mm.
Or the other guy that I get confused.
Drew Cook?
Drew Cook, yeah. Sorry. I get those two confused all the time. Drew Cook was, he was practically junk fishing. I mean, camera comes on to him at one point he's throwing a chatterbait, he comes to him to another point, he's flipping, and comes to another point in the day he's throwing a crankbait. So, like that, it was neat to see that. The first day, Randy Howe catching him on a frog. That was really cool. That was cool. He's catching him on a frog, he's catching him on chatterbait. So a lot of really cool stuff. I like the venue because the venue set up for them to do different techniques.
Mm-hmm.
There was a million different ways to catch them, and there's from what people were saying is that with their practice, there's so many fish in there that I think Mark Menendez said any bank you went to in practice, like you could just fish that bank all day and you'd catch 100 fish.
That's awesome. That's really cool. And hopefully this place will continue to be a destination just so they can highlight it. I'm really,
it sounds like they all want to go back.
Well, and then, and that's the thing too, is you want to find these places that are fun, but they're just different. And then again, credit to where credit's due with Bass. They did a much better job of just mixing up the schedule, bringing a bunch of fresh air into it. I know it's pretty river heavy. Some people like that. Some people don't. I personally like that they're going to a multitude of rivers this year to just kind of space out the people that hate forward facing sonar versus the people that like it. We got Rodney in the chat here with an interesting one here. They need to come back when there's no wind and see how far they spread out and catch them. Yeah, but springtime on tidal rivers, dude, that's called small craft advisory warning. That's just how it is, right? I don't know how you make sure that happens.
Rodney fishes the Potomac a lot. He knows how that works.
Mm-hmm. But I was shocked at how good the weather was in general, because I didn't think it was going to hold up as well as it was going into the week. And again, I was just still blown away that there was really only one or two guys that figured it out so close. Because again, Pasquotank River is loaded, and you would think more people in this event would stay close, but they didn't, which, it is what it is.
So side note about this tournament, and this tournament, Red Crest, Wheeler earlier in the year.
Mm-hmm.
How about the Crush City, started, Rapala started making plastics, a year ago, and they've got 3 big time wins on their plastics. I mean, how much that dream scenario for debuting your baits, right? Wheeler almost won down in Florida on the Bronco bug. Cannell just won Red Crest with the Mooch Minnow and the freeloader. The freeloader, I think Wheeler won with the freeloader on the James last year.
Yes.
Or the Challen, one of the two, whichever one he won.
He didn't win on the James, because I think that was Skeet Reese.
It was a Challen then.
Yeah,
Skeet Reese won the James. He won the Challen. I knew it was one of those areas. I mean, it's been insane how much they've blown up in such a little amount of time. And again, look at the pros that they have on their staff to help them design these baits, and it's Rapala, right? You expect to be, expect them to make a good bait and do the research and put in the time before they release them. But it's just phenomenal how crazy it's been, especially this year.
And
I have a nice collection of crushing it.
And it brings up an interesting thought about if you're trying to be a company that sponsors anglers, it's more about, I am not saying you shouldn't put out a great product, but putting more money into your marketing of, I need about 50 anglers, spread it out, because I need one person to win with my bait. That's almost as important as having the best bait ever made is getting a Jacob Wheeler to win with your bait to be able to push product. And like you said, they spread out their chips on the table and they hit 3 times.
Yeah. That's like, it's just phenomenal. Like if a phenomenal debut. But I just wanted to throw that out. I found that interesting that, it's like,
yeah,
it's crazy. It's like, Yamamoto 20 years ago, right? Where everybody's just like dominating with these baits.
And it's weird because I still think like what they're throwing is the knockoff of better products in general, but that's just my bias with American companies lately. I just personally, I just feel like a lot of American companies over the past couple of years, not all of them, they wait to see what's hot and then they just duplicate it, versus a lot of Japanese companies that genuinely push the envelope and try different things and they experiment. And that's why so much of their crap trickles over here and it gets slurped up like hotcakes. But that's possibly going to change over time, which I hopefully will.
I mean, it does. And I understand it from a company standpoint. If, you have anglers that are on your staff that say, we have this bait, like, what are you going to do? Like you either make the bait or they go, they're fishing something else.
Mm-hmm.
Like obviously you want those people fishing your baits. So like, I understand the need to, from a marketing perspective, to have something in that category. I don't necessarily like it. Right. But I understand it.
You ready to get into the hot sauce today? All right. So
let's go.
First thing we're going to do before we get to the really, really touchy subject is we're going to talk about what the Maryland Department had us talk about last Monday night. They did a survey. They wanted to know about this forward-facing sonar stuff. Please do not shoot the messenger, ladies and gentlemen. So this is the little survey that they put out for forward-facing sonar. Apparently, if you have a Maryland license, this was for about a 3-week window that this survey was available, that you would have gotten a notification. Of the 1,500 plus respondents, they asked, do you use forward-facing sonar? 81% said no, 19% said yes. Okay, and then we're going to get into forward-facing sonar is an effective tool. These are the questions that they asked. So of all the people that they polled, forward-facing sonar is an effective tool. Strongly
pretty
agree.
Even there, pretty even there with the people who don't use it and the people who use it.
This one actually doesn't. This one makes sense to me. This one is 100% online with what I would think would be said, which is strongly agree, no, or yes. But what's interesting here is with that is the next slide. Let me get to that one here, which is okay.
I was waiting for this one.
This is the fun one for the conversation. Forward-facing sonar provides a competitive advantage. Okay, 52% say no, and then 36% say yes. What is interesting with this here, if I can remember it, responding to the agreement, the statement forward-facing sonar provides a competitive advantage grouped into those who indicate they use the technology and those that did not. Why is this important? Because the people who did not have it, 52% of them said it gave you a massive advantage. Of all the people that actually use this shit, said it's not as big a deal as you think. So that is very interesting to me that's where the split was. The people that don't understand what they're talking about, this is my words, guys. Okay, don't skew that with the article. This is my personal opinion now. The people that don't have the technology say like, this is literally steroids. You just put this on your boat and you catch 30 pounds every single time. And then you have the people that actually use it and they're like, well, I mean, it's cool, but it's not a guaranteed win. That to me, first off, is absolutely fascinating. Even just how people are.
I found this really fascinating too, because you kind of see like an even split between strongly agree it is a competitive advantage and neutral as far as people who have actually used it.
Mm-hmm.
But when you look at the people who haven't used it and have no idea how it even works, and if you read any Bassmaster comment section, you'll see where these people come from.
Yep.
The people who have never used it and don't use it think that it's way more of an advantage than it actually is. especially around here. I mean, we're in Maryland, right? Right. You know, outside of like there, you know, the reservoirs and you know, Deep Creek, like,
Well,
you know, it's not a massive competitive advantage when you're talking about like the Potomac and the Upper Bay. Like,
I
not that big of a deal.
I agree. And then let's throw in the Pasquotank with what Kyle did and a couple like McKinney. Did they use scope? Absolutely. But I would like to believe they were still fishing the same areas, whether they had scope or not. Like it gave them an advantage to catch those fish that were staging and spawning. But if they didn't have it, Kyle would probably still be powered pulled down, grinding through the same areas. He just wouldn't be as efficient. But that's just, you know, my view on how he was fishing and everything.
He may not have caught 30 pounds a day, but like they're still going to fish for those fish once they figured out where they were setting up. I mean, that's a pretty typical pattern for bodies of water like that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, fishing stumps and cypress knees off the drop. I mean, that's what we do in literally every single river that has cypress trees in it.
Yeah, spoilers, guys.
They were fishing. Kyle Welcher was fishing the Pasquotank the same way that I fished the Pocomoke.
Yeah,
no different.
And again, like if there's a screenshot, I will put on my Instagram of Kyle's scope setup, and it was so cluttered and it was so hard to tell fish apart. And again, if you're a guy that just fishes scope, you get it. But my point is, like, there's a science to it to be able to see what he's seeing and to be able to react and know where to put a lure and stuff. And so it gets back to what this survey was talking about, that it's not as straightforward as it sounds. And it's interesting, again, before we go to the next slide, the people that have the technology and appreciate and are humbled by it, that it's not as straightforward as you think, compared to the people that just talk bleep online or are Randy Blockett fans. So let's go to the next one here.
I mean, I can tell you how many fish I saw on scope tonight, and I didn't catch a single one of them.
I
don't even know if they were bass.
Yeah, I get blown away by people that like I have on my boat, and they can point out stuff to me that I am still like that's a crappie, that's a bass, that one's 3 pounds, that one's 4. Like it's a skill. It really is. Let's see here. Okay, so next slide. Please select the ways in which you use forward-facing sonar. This one was also interesting too. Finding a specific species of fish, 30% of the time. Finding schooling fish, 80% of the time. Finding large fish, 40% of the time. Finding individual fish, 57% of the time. Finding fish habitat, 73% of the time. And I like to think that this honestly is, I don't know, because people don't know how to use it. I don't know. Like, that seems like the easiest thing to respond to is finding habitat, because of course with scope, you can quickly find it and everything. Schooling fish scored the highest. That kind of makes sense to me. This is the...
Who's looking for schools of fish though?
I'm just thinking like
you know, like in Maryland, like where are we looking for? I mean, where are you looking for schools of fish?
Well,
that doesn't make sense. That doesn't really make sense to me.
That gets down to
that would be that popular anyway.
What species did you target when using forward-facing sonar? 45% striped bass.
Okay, that makes sense.
White perch, 25. Northern snakehead. That's impressive to me. If you're scoping snakehead, that's impressive. It's 8%.
I just had my bass hat on. You know, I was only thinking about bass fishing. You know,
this blew me away because who the hell is scoping catfish? Apparently somebody is. It happens, but that blew my mind.
If I wanted to catch catfish, I would use it 100%.
I almost feel like on like the upper, at least the Potomac, you just throw dynamite and you'd probably hit a catfish. There's so many in there. Like, it's not hard.
I've scoped some giant catfish.
Really?
And I knew they were catfish.
What's the biggest catfish you caught in the Upper Bay?
Probably about 35 pounds.
Good Lord.
That was on chatterbait. Or no, that was on spinnerbait. Caught that on spinnerbait. I caught one that was probably 25 on a drop shot.
Good Lord. That will pull
with
your tackle.
With 8 pound cigar tattoo.
Yeah.
That was pretty fun. That was pretty fun. That one I scoped, and I knew it was a catfish. Like it was like one of those slow days, and I'm fishing for smallmouth, and I scan over, and there's a giant blob on top of this rock, and I was like, "Yep, that's catfish." And immediately, as soon as my bait hit the bottom, I went, "Don't." And then it took me, like 25 minutes to get it in.
We got Tom here. Tom says, I use it for catfish and carp. I mean, yeah, dude, like I apparently it happens. So that's impressive to me. The one that was also no shock was 35% crappie, 19% panfish. Ice fishing made the list up here of destinations. Deep Creek, it has to be Deep Creek is who's telling that.
I'm surprised crappie's not higher.
Yes, thank you. I was surprised that too. I thought it'd be like largemouth and crappie would be 1 and 2, generally speaking. And again,
and yellow perch.
And yeah, and so bass was of course
on yellow perch.
Striper was
February in the Susquehanna. Live scope is stupid for yellow perch.
Really?
Yeah, when they school up and they move up the Susquehanna to spawn, I mean it's dumb how crazy it is. Hence the reason that you see so many 2-pound perch caught.
Oh, okay.
I mean it's dumb. Outside of bait, now I would like to preface this with like, I don't think live scope affects bass fishing at all. I don't think it does. But some of these other species, like perch, like crappie, I feel like live scope could have a large impact on them. But on the other hand, we have creel limits for a reason, and scope doesn't make you catch more than your creel limit. It just makes you catch creel limit faster. So take that for what it's worth. That's just kind of my opinion on it. But is it really going to, because the guys that are going to keep crappie, like they're going to go out and they're going to catch their whatever the limit is here. I think it's like 15. They're going to catch their limit of crappie, whether they have scope or not. Like it's not hard to catch the limit of crappie.
No.
However, scope does, it does two things. One, it allows you to target bigger fish, especially crappie. You can target bigger crappie, and it does allow you to catch them faster. And I could see like the more the people that don't have the same amount of ethics that you and I might have, could hurt those populations. And unfortunately, there's a lot of those types of people in the world.
Because when you're dealing with species that are like consuming a walleye, a striper, a crappie, I can definitely think in places where people are really dialed into the technology, that argument I'll listen to of like, listen, people are specifically targeting the 3-pound crappie in this place. Could there be an impact down the road? Possibly, yeah, because you're consuming the bigger fish that you want their genetics in the system. Okay, let's talk about that. But then what does that mean? Like you said, like they're not going past their creel limit. They're just now able to target maybe the bigger breeders in the place. But is that should that rule be blanketed for the state, or should it be location based? Okay, maybe a 2,000 acre lake should make some adjustments to where it could probably be scoped pretty hard versus the Chesapeake Bay that's massive. Maybe that doesn't have the same things. And I think it's why it's like you can't do cookie cutter. Everything is unique. Every situation is different.
Yeah, you're not gonna like crappie. You're not gonna touch the crappie population in the Potomac or the Upper Bay. Like there's just billions of them.
Yeah.
But when you're looking at like a small reservoir, maybe like let's go with like the
res.
Let's say like the res. Yeah.
2,000 acres.
Something small. Yeah, something 2,000 acres. Yeah, something small like that. I could see that being an issue there, and maybe the blanket creel limit. And this is way off topic, but maybe the blanket creel limit for every body of water in the state. Yeah, maybe that's a process that needs to be revisited. I mean, I know places that, okay, in Maryland, wild trout, you can keep 2 wild. If it's a non-designated trout stream, you can keep 2. I know places that if people knew the trout that were in there, they would get wiped out in no time. Those bodies of water like that, maybe they should have no creel limit for that species. I able to keep trout out of these creeks, but
Did I lose Paul?
What happened?
Nope, Paul's there. Okay, cool.
I lost it. But yeah, so these, certain bodies of water may need different creel limits. Like I said, these trout streams, if people knew about them, and I will never tell a soul where these creeks are. If people knew about them, and you could keep your 2 trout a day or whatever it is, I don't even remember what it is because I don't keep trout, but you could wipe out these streams. I mean, because there's such a small population in them. So maybe that's something that the state needs to look at is, we need to have, designated creel limits for these bodies of water. Now that's next to impossible. I mean, I can't imagine the amount of time that would take, the time and manpower that would take to develop that. But if we're really concerned about the bodies of water, that's maybe something and that could even go for bass as well in some places that we know that the bass population is struggling.
Yeah, dude, yeah, preach 100%. And you need that nuanced approach when it comes to if you're going to get the government involved in things like this, which, I mean, right now, guys, it sounds like Maryland is not going to move with legislation or anything like that to adjust forward-facing sonar, but it's because of what Minnesota did.
Let's be honest. If they surveyed 1,500 people and, barely 15% of the people that they surveyed actually use it, is probably not having a big impact.
It's not, but that's what's so fascinating to me is, going back to that survey, if I can use my mouse correctly here, when 19% of 1,500 people use it, it shows you that take that sample to Bassmaster's Facebook page, Randy Blockett's comment section, like how few people actually use this shit. And then how many people that use it are really good at it. It paints this pyramid so much better of who the 1%ers are, the McKinneys and people like that.
But it's funny because 15 years ago, I could say that you could say the same thing about side scan. 15 years ago, I didn't know. I mean, of the people that let's just take my club, right? Of the 30 people in the club, like 15 years ago, none of them had side scan, even though it had been out. It had been out, and it was a big deal. Like the first time that somebody got a unit that had side scan. Take that to today, and like literally everybody has side scan. I'm sure it'll become that way, and you'll see that number grow. As far as live scope usage comes, but it takes time for people to adapt to technology.
It does, and specifically, it's generational based. The one thing I hated about this survey that it brought up immediately was you should have asked the people how old they were. That should have been on there, because I'm very fascinated by that, because I do believe, not being ageist or whatever, but let's just be real, the younger generation adapts to technology. They learn it, they absorb it a lot easier. And so when it comes to getting on YouTube and looking for information, when it comes to evolving and getting smarter, not the millennials, but a Gen, whatever it is, whatever McKinney is. I don't know what, I guess he's a millennial, I think. But anyway,
Gen Z. Yeah,
Gen Z. Dude, those guys soak it up. Okay, I'm going to learn scope. I'm going to get on YouTube. I'm going to get on the forums. I'm going to sleep out of my truck because I don't have, family, a wife and kids or whatever. And we're just seeing all that right now. And
you just mentioned something that is way more impactful than live scope, and it's that the younger people have less obligation and spend more time on the water. JT Tompkins spends 300 days a year on the water, kind of like that guy in Florida. He self-admittedly he put he put 850 hours on his motor in 1 year. That's how much he fishes. You can't, as anglers get older and, they start to have families, and that's going to impact how well they fish and how much time they have to adapt to the next thing. Whether that be baits, techniques, live scope, whatever it might be, that's just the rules of life, right? Like you want to spend more time with your family and less time with your job. And the younger guys coming up, and you can see this in the business world, you can see it anywhere, like the younger guys coming up that don't have these obligations and can devote more, that are more successful. That's just kind of how it is, especially now that we have the access to information that we do with the internet and YouTube, and you can literally, like, whatever you want to know about fishing is on the internet. Like, if you need to know something about bass fishing, it's on the internet. If you have the time to devote to it, you can gain the knowledge base that it took someone 30 years to gain. In a couple of years. And what does a high schooler have better to do with their time? If they're obsessed with fishing, what do they have better to do with their time than literally just, soak up all this information that's available to them?
And you're fishing you're fishing the same fisheries.
Gap come down.
You're fishing the same fisheries.
Right.
If you have a college event on Hartwell, well, that's the same place you're going to have a Bass Open. And so you spent 4 years of your college life on Hartwell, learning Hartwell. Then all of a sudden you make a jump to a Bass Open on Hartwell. You have just as much knowledge, if not more, than a guy that's been there for 20 years. And that's what people always want to shit on Forward Facing Sonar. The high school and college fishing, them putting so much focus on that and making it like travel baseball, basically, where parents are throwing a shit ton of money, they're getting the bass boat and stuff, and they can just go for it like that. That has a huge reason why the age thing dropped as much as it did, 100%. Because before Scope, you had the Jordan Lees, you had all these, the Polinick, you had younger anglers out there. Just technology did give them a little bit of a bump, though. It did, 100%.
It's funny though that like you didn't, those people that you named didn't get the hate that the younger anglers now get. It's really that's really become prevalent. I think it's this weird hatred of live scope that these younger anglers, who some of them are incredibly talented anglers, and they just understand things. And you don't just land on the biggest fish in the lake by dropping live scope. Like, that's not how that works. Like, especially you go to a lake like Sam Rayburn. It's 100,000 acres. You didn't just dump your boat in the water and drop live scope and you found the biggest fish in the lake.
Unless you're Scott Martin.
Well, then somebody told you. So
Allegedly, for everyone out there, allegedly.
But yeah, I mean, they understand. People say, "Oh, they don't understand fish movement." I think they understand fish movement better than most of us do because of live scope. So they've been able to see what these fish do and know where they move and know where they're going to be located. And locating fish has always been the number one. I mean, that's the number one rule of bass fishing, is locating the fish. It's the hardest part. So that's what KBD was so good at, using. Oh, imagine that technology. And so they've just become better because they spend more time on the water. They have more access to information, and they don't have the other obligations that these other people have. Because, and I'm not knocking the parents that support them. Hey, we all didn't grow up with the access to the same things. They had access to better tools. They had access to a boat in general, just to spend time on the water. And I think everyone, I don't have kids, but I feel like everyone wishes that they could support their children, the way that some of these parents do of some of these younger anglers. if you had the means, would you not do it? Like,
Well,
right?
you teed us up for the next thing, which it's
I tried.
it's interesting because for you guys that know, I was a strength and conditioning coach for 16 years in Loudoun County, doing primarily baseball and daddy ball, and the amount of money that's ungodly parents would throw at Jimmy to get better. And they would hire a coach, some kind of coach, me or a pitching coach, something like that, to make their kid better. Some would stay, some would be involved, some treated like daycare so they could sit on their iPad in the car. But when it comes to fishing now, I see that there's two camps. You have I fish as a parent and I'm getting my kid into it, which gets you a huge heads up if you're already in the game. But then you have this other group where it's like, I don't know anything about fishing, but my kid's passionate. What do I do? And if you're a normie, you would think like soccer, t-ball, and other crap, you get a coach. Well, isn't a guide a coach? And that is a spicy topic online. Because I kind of get it if you're a normie. Like, you would think a guide is just a code word for a coach on the water. I don't know. I don't. That's a whole can of worms.
Okay, so I'm gonna give you my opinion on like it as if I was a guide. You're gonna have to pay me a lot more money to coach your kid than for me to take your kid on a guide trip, because all I'm worried about taking you on a guide trip is you having a good time and catching fish. I don't have to worry about teaching you anything. I mean, obviously, if you go on a good guide trip, they're going to teach you things. But my main goal is for you to go out and catch fish. That's the name of the game. Like, that's my job, right? So now if you're adding, well, now can you teach my kid how to cast, how to flip, what baits to use, how to select bait color. Now we're getting into a way more complicated situation.
Mm-hmm.
So there's definitely needs to be a difference between a guide and a coach even when it comes to fishing, just like there is for there would be for baseball. It would be like going to a batting cage to hit some balls with your buddies versus trying to make the travel team, right? It's the best analogy I could come up with. Like I'm having a machine pitched to me just so I can have some fun versus I'm hiring a hitting coach to teach me how to hit the ball.
And
big difference in my opinion.
And I think the getting right to the issue to me and this is with all youth sports, is once travel ball became a thing, it all got down to getting your kid on the most competitive thing, and that snowballed to the fact that nowadays there is no developmental league. Honestly, you have to just pay people to develop your kid, because Little League doesn't do that anymore. There's no coaches. All the coaches are in travel. And why I say that is, in high school fishing and college fishing, it's so much catering to the 1%, the really good ones. And it seems like what's getting left behind are the kids, and the parents are like, well, I don't know anything about fishing, but I want my kid to get into it. And you don't have organizations.
There are more organizations than you would think. There are quite a few youth programs that are out there. If you look at some specific clubs, Bass Legends, which is a big club in the Upper Bay area, has a pretty big youth program. There's actually a junior club. I believe it's called Upper Bay Junior Bassing. That is a whole club dedicated to junior fishing. And then where you're getting your teaching and getting these not so the less stellar, those the ones that aren't standouts, where they're getting help is they're getting paired with bow captains, and that's one of the things that I enjoy doing. When I'm not fishing tournaments, is I like bow captaining for these youth tournaments and being able to teach those kids I mean, I thought a kid had a drop shot last year. He'd never thrown a drop shot in his life. His first cast with a drop shot, he catches his close to his PB smallmouth.
Wow.
So like it's just a really rewarding experience, and I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy sharing my knowledge of fishing with other people. That's one of the reasons that I started doing Bass and Beer Radio, was because I enjoy sharing the knowledge, and being able to take that into these youth tournaments and help these kids get better and learn things is that's one path there, is getting involved with the youth. Now I also think that these youth organizations, there's not enough of them.
I agree with that,
because they're really it's really difficult and requires a lot of time from the organizers.
a lot of sacrifice.
You think being a tournament director is hard? Try running a youth club, and which means you're running the youth club, and you're the tournament director for the youth club, and you're making sure you're corralling a bunch of kids into to make sure that they're prepared. And I know Joe Booker with Bass Legends has even went to as far as getting some kids that are less fortunate, and making sure that they have the right equipment, and going out and getting donations from people to make sure that the kids can be set up with to have a couple of different rods to be able to use and things like that. So I think that limits the youth programs, is just the amount of time and effort that it takes to run them. And then again, it's a lot of times it's hard for them to get boat captains, which blows my mind, because there's nothing in it for the boat captains, right? If you're lucky, you get a couple of bucks for gas, which I don't care. Like, I'll go out and burn a whole tank of gas, to make sure that those kids get on fish, because that's rewarding to me. And I don't even like kids. That's the funny part. Like, I don't even like kids, and I still find it. That's
a weird pitch.
I've never wanted. I don't have kids. I've never wanted kids, but it's still a rewarding experience for me. It's like babysitting your nephew. Like, it's okay for a day, but you can give him back, right?
and I just want to tap on that too, because
good.
Yeah. From what I saw too, with just the baseball side of things, the biggest issue is the people that are good at it. They don't want to do it because part of it is there's no pay in it. Number two is the drama. And that's, I think, in any sport. It's not just fishing, it's not just baseball, but the really good, like, oh, you want this person to teach your kid how to do it. Most of them, they're like, I don't want to deal with it because of the hassle. Or it's like, I'm giving up how much of my time for free, which, okay, better or worse, you could have that moral argument there, but it's, how do you make it more, what incentive do you have to give the old guard, the people with the boats, to be able to get them out there? Because the issue, like I think you painted so well, you need boat captains to get the next generation hooked, because spoiler, fishing license sales have gone down for the past 20 years or whatever. It's just a slow decline. You have to get the next generation hooked on it, whether it is with Forward Facing Sonar, whether it is youth tournaments. And I think this is a bigger issue that you're seeing across everything. Yes, you still get the McKinneys, you get these really good angles that come out of the programs, but in general, those are within areas and cultures that are big into fishing. In Northern Virginia and Maryland, places like that, you need a better outreach to get these people that, okay, I've never fished before, but my kid's interesting. You need to gobble them up and be like, I'm going to put you on something so you're hooked for life. And that, there needs to be a better messaging or money thrown at that specifically, in my opinion.
Yeah, it's, we don't have the bass fishing culture that, like, say, like Alabama does, where, their high school tournaments pull 500 boats.
Yeah.
It's insane. But it's really going to take a cultural shift. And I say, I'm using culture in more of a, like, professional term, not a, a background term. it's going to take a culture shift because, think about it. If you didn't do something growing up, what are the chances that you're going to do it when you're older?
Mm-hmm.
So I think you may see it eventually, and it's going to take time. Once these kids get out of high school, they get out of college, and they get it, out on their own. They look back and say, hey, these guys, this really helped me out when I was younger. I'm going to do this. But convincing people that are my age or older, to do something that's out of, that they don't fully comprehend, I think is difficult.
And this is something else.
And I think it is a comprehension thing.
Yeah.
I think they don't really comprehend, what the impact of this stuff is.
And it's also, again, it's not everyone in the chat's going to say, this isn't me, but there's enough people out there where it comes to drama of, okay, a kid tries to get a guy to get better and people start shitting on him for doing that. And it's like, okay, context is important. Is it an 18-year-old? Is it a high school kid? Is it a 6-year-old? Like, if this is somebody that's trying to get into the sport, you got to be more receptive to, yes, okay, you're not doing it the right way, but you're trying to get in the sport. We want you to be here, but let's adjust it if we don't think it's culturally correct. But not being in this massive stigmatism, or the scope thing with the youth. It's like, oh, these kids just like to use scope. It's like, yeah, but they're at least out there. You got to understand, you need to pull all these people into your tent now, because in 10, 15 years, dude, it's going to be a lot smaller if you're not more receptive to getting kids underneath your umbrella.
Yeah, I mean, and look, as far as the live scope thing goes with kids, if they're on the water, they're on the water, in my opinion. I don't care how they're fishing. I think it's better that they're outside and doing something than the alternative. As far as hiring, guides for your kids, I don't think that's necessarily the best way to go about it. Depending on your situation. I mean, if that's the only option that you, if that's the only option that you have for your kid to get on the water, then so be it. You got to do what you got to do. But, I think, again, we've talked about travel ball, and, it's the same way. Like I grew up, I played baseball when I was younger, before I got into high school and realized I was a way better runner than baseball player. But, part of, and maybe this is why I wasn't a very good baseball player, but part of me enjoying baseball was, learning from my mom. My mom was a softball player. And that was part of the enjoyment for me. Was, it was, we were kind of taking this journey together, right? We're out in the yard, working on, drills, whatever, and, my mom's out, I'm doing this with my mom. And that was part of what made me love playing baseball. And to me personally, with baseball, as it got more serious, it got less fun for me. When it came to that point of, getting into some more competitive type leagues, or, just as you're aging up and it got more competitive, and it was more about spending time with the coach and less about, spending time with my mom. That really took away from the sport for me. That's not for everybody. Some people who are diehard passionate about it, about being a professional, are going to see that differently, I think. And again, I'm just drawing on my personal experience that I had with baseball growing up. Honestly, track and cross country were the same way. I was a pretty good runner. When I got into college, I hated it because it was different. It wasn't about, the fun anymore. It was it was more about, you have to do this, you have to do this, you have to do this, right? It was way too structured. It was way too competitive. And I love competition, don't get me wrong, but it was what those coaches, go back to that coaching term, right? What those coaches put on me, I didn't like. It didn't work for me. It's not what I wanted. It's not what I wanted out of the sport. And I think you can make that same comparison with fishing. Sorry, I forgot what we were talking about for a second. Like, I don't fish every day of my life. So, when you have, if you're just going out, if you have the ability to go out and fish with your kid and learn with them, I think you should do that, because you don't, if you have a younger kid, say we're talking like pre-high school, it's going to be way more rewarding for them. Now you have your outliers, like your Trey McKinney's, who knew it, was at 10 years old, wanted to be a professional fisherman, seriously wanted to be a professional fisherman, versus, that's the outlier, right? 99 out of 100 kids aren't going to be like that. And if you can see the same thing in travel ball, right? Where parents, force their kids to go into, go through all these coaching sessions and stuff like this. And they just end up hating it. So make it, I feel like if you have the capabilities, make it something that you can do together, learn together, and get better together. It'll be much, much better for the kid in the future. But that's just my 2 cents.
Derek Smith, those are facts with the kids. My 4-year-old loves going through baits and naming them and being out on the water, but only does this with me. Otherwise, it's Spider-Man and Ninja Turtles. That's preach. We got Justin.
Good.
Yeah, go ahead. Before
It's. I mean, to me, it's something that I've seen, throughout my life with kids in various sports. It doesn't matter what it is. You're 99 out of 100, or probably even a higher ratio than that, are not going to be that serious about it. And if you start putting them through all of these rigors of what they need to be a serious tournament angler, it's just going to push them away. Where if you can find something to connect with them, find that capability there somewhere, and find a way to connect with them and do something with them, it's going to keep them involved in the sport way, way, way longer. I mean, I still fish with my dad, not as much as I would like to, but we still go, usually once a year, we go out, we'll go on a trip. I took him to the St. Lawrence a couple years ago.
Oh, cool.
Which was amazing. It's like the only time I've ever seen my dad smile.
Oh, that's awesome.
He loves smallmouth fishing. So, but that's something that we continue to do together, even though, maybe once a year, once every other year, but because, life gets in the way, but it's something that we've been able to continue to do, our entire lives. And I've been fishing with my dad since I was, 5 years old. So, it's something, that I've had with me my entire life. And you get that connection with somebody, and it just makes you, it just holds you to the sport a little bit better.
It does.
In my humble opinion.
And that's what it's about. It's about getting kids into fishing and not having those rotten eggs spoiling it. I mean, Justin H., I can't share this because it's on Instagram, but Justin says, my 14-year-old kid and him and his boat captain got in an altercation last year on the Potomac River. A person came around a dock and was chastising my son for fishing his spot and told him to learn ethics. I mean, yeah, like that sounds like a Potomac River jockey to me. Honestly.
It's going to happen. Like, I don't know who the person was.
He probably thinks he's hot shit.
He may be a guide on the river. No name, not mention any names.
Yeah, but I think that's also the fact of there's tone deaf people.
That's something that's something you're going to have to learn, is that things happen and just how to handle those situations. And I'm a lot less hot-headed than I used to be. Typically, like if I run into that situation, so perfect example, yesterday when I was out, one second.
No,
My dog's opening my door. When I was out yesterday, I mean, there's 3 boats on this grass bed. 3. There's only 3 of us. This is a huge grass bed. This grass bed's like a mile long. And this one of the one boat, like I knew one of the other guys that was out there, no problem. Like we never got within 100 yards of each other. The other guy proceeded to, every time I caught a fish, move a cast and a half in front of me. Like literally every time I caught a fish, he did it 4 times. The first time I was like, yeah, it's just coincidence, right? Because he came from quite a ways off, and then he started, kind of fishing like near me, and then I caught another fish, and he like got on his trolling motor and went around and got a cast and a half in front of me, and he did it 4 times. And 5 years ago, I probably would have grenaded a rattle trap into the back of his boat, which I did on the Potomac one day.
oh my god.
It was an Excalibur, like a $50 trap. But yesterday we just turned around and I just looked at my buddy that was fishing with me. I was like, well, this guy's a jackwagon, right?
Yeah.
And we just turned around and we just went on fishing. We didn't let it bother us. We went on fishing.
Yeah.
It wasn't a big deal. And sometimes the comment said, some people are gonna, they're gonna approach you, and if in that, you just have to know how to react to that situation. And it's typically, like for me, like it's just better to leave.
Yeah, especially if
I'd
it's a
much rather de-escalate
14-year-old
the situation.
dude. Like, I mean, it's the same thing. Like,
if it's a 14-year-old,
like you're really
if you come around a dock and you start yelling at a 14-year-old, you're a piece of crap.
Yeah, it's
like,
who are you talking to?
You can handle that in a totally, if it was an ethical situation, say it's an ethical situation, right? Or like an ethics situation where, you were fishing this side of the dock and they pulled in on the other side of the dock. You can have that conversation way differently.
Mm-hmm.
And be like, hey, I was fishing this dock. It's not really cool that that you pulled in here. When you start yelling at them and tell them they need to learn the ethics, you take it into a confrontation where it could have been a learning situation.
Mm-hmm. And it's just, again, know your audience.
Unfortunately, nobody learns from this because it literally happens every day on the flats in the Potomac.
And all it does is again, this is the issue I think with fishing culture too, is you're yelling at the paddleboard, or you're yelling at the kayak, you're yelling at the 14-year-old, and you're just going to piss people off. It doesn't solve anything. It's one thing if you're yelling at your club mate Daryl and you guys are in a spot, okay, whatever, a little barbaric, but do it. But okay, you're pissing off a 14-year-old that you don't know. You don't know the dad's packing or whatever. What is that accomplishing? You're going to yell at the guy in a kayak or Samantha on a paddleboard. She doesn't know shit. Like, it literally is a waste of time. They're out there I've had so many people cross my line, and I know they don't fish. They're out here on date day and they just paddle right in front of my line. How are you doing? It's a beautiful day. It's like, yeah, okay. What, mm-hmm. what yelling at them is going to do nothing.
Right. And honestly, like, it's not affecting your fishing.
It's not. It really
you want to get in your head. Like, them paddling through, like, we troll motor through that area of, all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And, and disturb way more than, somebody just paddling through on a kayak. I feel like we let a lot of things bother us that shouldn't.
We really do, actually, as fishermen. Yeah, my God. Paul,
it's terrible.
I don't want to keep you all night. What do you guys have going on? What does Chad have going on with this Friday night?
So this Friday night we have Josh Craig from JCS will be in studio. He is down visiting some family, so he's going to stop by the studio. That is from JCS Marine up in Rhode Island that did Tony's boat restoration. And then I'm working on getting the TBF national champion to come on. He happens to be a friend of mine. He's from Maryland. He lives in Jopptown, lives, 2 minutes away from me. Trying to work out. Yeah. JT Lang.
Yeah.
Upper Bay. Been fishing Upper Bay for a long time. He's been fishing the TBF from Maryland a long time. Won the national championship on Dardanelle a couple weeks ago. So trying to get him on, trying to work out some dates to get him on to talk about the national championship and, kind of, explains like, some of the opportunities that you get from fishing some of these local trails, like the TBF, whether it be Maryland, Delaware, DC, where Virginia, depending on where you're from. There's a lot of cool things that you can get from them, and a lot of, big time. I mean, he won, a brand new Ranger 520. So if anybody is looking for a Ranger 520, reach out to JT, because he has a brand new Phoenix. So I'm pretty sure he's selling it. But it was a $125,000 prize package that he got the opportunity to fish for from qualifying through essentially a 5-tournament trail and then a championship tournament.
That's crazy, man. That's so cool. And going from like tidal water to Dardanelle, that's always fascinating when people make those treks and come out with a victory.
I will say that if you can catch them on tidal water, you can catch them anywhere. I've always said that, because we're so used to being in a tight window of being able to catch fish as far as like their feeding window, versus fishing on a lake where you can run a pattern all day and you don't have to worry about the tide swing. It's plus it relates to any kind of river system. It relates, and your current generation lakes, like how fish set up in current because you're used to fishing. You're used to diagnosing current and where those fish are going to be. So I feel like tidal fishermen in general are much more rounded.
I agree with that to an extent. I think the Clearwater thing, it's always because you have the river rat syndrome, which will people go with that down here. But I think personally that's more of a individual issue versus just tidal river fishermen as a whole. It's interesting. That's a whole other conversation that we could get into, though.
Oh yeah.
Honestly, dude. Guys, as always, link in the episode description, everything we talked about. I'll also link everything to Bass NBA Radio. Go check them out at 7:00 every Friday night, right over there on Facebook and of course YouTube. Go hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. Let's get them up to over 1,000 subscribers over there. And we will see you guys next time on Fishing the DMV. Bye. You're listening to Fishing the DMV with your host, Thomas Ahrens. Fishing the DMV is brought to you by Jake's Bait and Tackle, located in Winchester, Virginia.
If that doesn't get you jacked up, I don't know what will.